Hey, what's up fellow anglers? I'm out here on the California Delta, and this morning I'm out here early. I got a long stretch for you, and we're gonna throw topwater, specifically Whopper Plopper. I got two of them. I got the 130 and I got the 110. So I'm trying, this is the first time I've ever thrown the 110, but we're mainly gonna throw the 130 right here because it's a little bit windy. I fished this spot last night, it was a little calmer, and I got like 5 bites. So I wanted to show you this long stretch right here. I'm gonna put a waypoint here, and then I'm gonna put a waypoint at the very end. We're gonna try to get some fish catches in between, talk to you about where I'm throwing it. Right now we've got the high tide, a really high one, and it's outgoing, and it's pretty slow. And you'll see that tide right here in the video. I'll show you what the tide looks like on my Lowrance tides chart. Let's go down and try to catch some fish. I'm going to show you the nuances on this spot, what I'm casting to, my retrieve, all the specifics, so you can come out here and repeat this. Now, I didn't catch anything big last night, but I caught a bunch, so you never know when that big one's going to eat. And this is just a fun area. You can come out here, start in the morning, catch a bunch of fish, get your confidence up. So let's go out here, take a look, try to put some fish in the boat, and I'll show you what we're doing. So let me tell you how I'm fishing this spot real quick. Right now, the bank is pretty open, so I'm gonna go down and parallel this. The water's up, there's a big weed, there's all these weeds underneath and grass underneath here because the tide is so high. So I'm gonna get up here and parallel the bank. I'm gonna try to get these fish to come up either on the inside trough of this or right above that weed bed. So I'm just gonna keep throwing my bait right along the edge of this, and I'm gonna try to get it as tight as possible so I can keep this bait in the strike zone as long as possible. Now I'm gonna keep running this until I get around the corner. I'm gonna keep parallel on the bank until I start hitting some of these tulies that are sticking up. And then we're gonna fish those a little bit different. But right now, I'm just gonna keep this retrieve a little bit quick because there's a little bit of chop on the water. So I want my bait, this Whopper Plopper 130, to make a lot of commotion because I want these fish to be able to see it and hone in on this since there's a little bit of chop on the water. Now, if there was a little less chop on the water, I would probably slow my retrieve down just a little bit so it's not making as much noise and have it be a little less commotion on there. But because we got a little breeze this morning, right now we're gonna keep this thing moving pretty fast. You can even pause it, speed it up a little bit, and just kind of vary your retrieve just to try to see if we can trigger some of these bites from these fish in this little trough area. Let me tell you real quick where we're at, since I forgot to mention that in the very beginning. Even though you saw the map and the waypoint, we're up here by B&W. I would consider this probably part of the northern part of the Delta, right on the McCollum River, right by the bridge. Just fishing a little stretch, the wind-blown stretch. Now we've got the area where it's transitioned into little tulies that are gonna make little points here. We're gonna have little pockets all through here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna throw this towards the bank, and I'm gonna try to run it in between all these little tule patches, just like we would be fishing on a lake. Each one of these creates a point. So I wanna run my bait in front of all these points because these fish could be on these points ready to attack this bait. Oh, jeez. Oh, that's the fun part of this bait. Whew. Whew. That's not a big one, but oh my gosh, he absolutely annihilated that. It's a little guy. But you just never know when these fish are gonna come up here and just smack this thing. I mean, I thought that was gonna be a 4-pounder. But that water's warm. You'll see that on the earlier part of the video, all the conditions, this water's really warm out here. It's been warm past couple days, so this topwater bite should be pretty good. That was a nice one, that was fun. So one thing I wanted to give you a tip on and talk to you about is the grass out here. On this bait, if you get one little piece of grass on it, it pretty much fouls up your cast immediately. It starts spinning around, ruins the action up on the tail. So you're trying to put it in areas that don't have a lot of surface grass, and that sometimes can be tough out here on the Delta. But I have a little trick that I like to do if I'm still trying to put it in a, some skinny water where there's about, I don't know, anywhere from 6 inches to a foot that I'm trying to get this bait over on top of, is instead of casting it out and then letting that bait just crash onto the surface, I actually will, as it's hitting the water, I'll put my thumb on the spool and I'll lift my rod tip up as the bait hits the water. And what that does is it skips. It'll take that bait and it'll skim it across the water and make it come back to me a little bit, rather than throwing it out and letting the bait just crash right in, and then it'll submerge and it'll get hooked up on some of that grass. So let me show you. As the bait starts to hit the water, I lift the rod tip up and bring it back towards me, and then I engage my reel. So what that does is it almost hydroplanes the bait. So when you do that, you give yourself the opportunity to have a lot more casts, because the bait never really gets submerged. And now I can throw this bait on these areas that'll have a little more skinny water, and I'm increasing the amount of casts I can make because I'm not getting it fouled up every time. Oh, there's another one. Yeah. All right. Oop, too much line. All right. So that one, right on the outside of this weed line right here. There's some current ripping right through this weed line, and I just threw it right on the outside. Nice, steady, slow retrieve on that one. Like I said, they're not big, but it's fun to catch all these topwater fish. Now there is one part of this stretch that I'm showing you right now that you really can't fish this bait through. It's about 300 yards. You can throw a frog or a Senko. I just tried a frog in here just for a second. Didn't get bit on it. But there's a couple little areas we can throw the Whopper Plopper through that are about 10, 20 yards that I'm gonna try to get bit. And then there's these big weed mats out here. And right when I get to them, I basically just kind of pop the bait up and over them so I'm not getting a face full of weeds on this bait when it comes back through. So I'm just gonna try to hit a couple of these little pockets in between here. They weren't really hitting the frog. So I don't know if let's see if we're trying to get them just to react to this thing. So you're gonna notice on this stretch, we're about halfway through it. It's super diverse and there's always fish here. So you got the riprap wall for the first half of it. Then you come into an area that's got some cheese and some pockets, the water's a little bit flat in there because it's got some protection from the wind. And now we're coming out to where it's gonna make the point in the turn, and you've got toolies right on the edge here of the current. So you can fish this a bunch of different ways. I'm throwing topwater this morning, but you can throw a chatterbait, a crankbait out here, a lipless, throw some Senkos up on these toolie points. You got options, and it's super diverse, and we've caught some fish so you know that they're here. So fish to your strengths. Just wanted to show you a Whopper Plopper bite out here and give you some tips on this bait because it's always lots of fun and I love this bait. Oh, there we go. Oh yeah, that one feels pretty good. Oh yeah, that's a nice one right there. Woo! Stay on there. Stay on there, baby. Come on, come on, come on. Man, I guess you should bring the net sometimes. These big ones. Oh yeah, it's a good one. Get over here, get over here, get over here. Woo! Woo! Yes! That's right there is why you throw the Whopper Plopper. That is a nice one. It's not a giant, but whew, that's a solid fish right there. Crushed it too, crushed it. Same thing. I get the camera angle better, but I'm just following this outside edge of this point that this weed line makes. And I threw it right in front of this tule point right here. I actually had another big one chase it to the boat right here. And I said, man, that was a big one. And all of a sudden, this big one came up and just smashed it. So you know they're here. You just got to be patient with the bait. I'm following this tule line. There is a ton of little bitty babies, balls of bait over here. I'm just gonna follow this thing. I'm gonna go to the very end because I'm gonna put a waypoint there and then a waypoint at the other end, so you know this long stretch on where you can come and get some nice ones like that. Boom. So another thing on this area is I'm fishing the outside edge of these weeds. The inside edge, it's pretty shallow in there. And the water's up. It's only like 2 feet of depth way in there. And you're gonna see here on this screenshot how this makes a plateau or a flat, and then it drops off out here, and there's some weeds, there's bait out here. So these big fish are gonna come up and move up back and forth all day long. So I'm targeting the bigger fish on this outside edge because I think this is a higher percentage area. These are summertime bass. They like to get down deep, then they're gonna come up to feed and they're gonna move up and down all day. You just have to hope that you time it right. You get this bait in front of a fish that's ready to eat. So you're just gonna have to keep covering water with this bait. You can even go do this entire stretch, go all the way back and start all over again, because you never know what other fish are gonna come up and be ready to eat when you put that bait in front of them. Okay, so after I caught that really nice one, I went down probably another, I don't know, it's probably 700 yards to the end of the stretch where I like to fish this, and I didn't get another bite. But that doesn't mean the fish aren't here. And I know I did say that fishing this area when the tide was up, you could fish all those back areas in the very initial part of the stretch. But you can also, if you don't get here at the right time, you can fish this on a lower tide. And what that does is it pulls the water out and it brings those fish out with it. And when you fish these outside edges, it actually gets your baits closer to where those fish are, and you can draw them up from a little bit deeper. So you can still, even though I fish this on a really high tide, you can still fish this on a lower tide. Now I'll throw a waypoint up right here. I want to show you the very end of this stretch. So the key points of this stretch out here, we had a lot of sparse tules. We had some current. It sat on a point. We had some bait in the area, and we had different areas that we could fish. We had some riprap. We had some pockets that were, the water was a little more slack in there. And then we had these outside edge of the tules. So there was a lot of different areas to fish. You can fish it a lot of different ways. And we caught some fish, so we know that they're here. So. All right, guys, we're at spot number 2, morning session, topwater, Whopper Plopper, 130, 110. Let's get right into it. As we go along, we'll talk about why this spot is good, what we're doing, how we're fishing it, and all the particulars that you need to be successful out here and catch a bunch of good fish on the Whopper Plopper. Let's go. All right, so on this area, what we're doing is we're just gonna make our way, follow this bank right here. We got some riprap, which creates a trough. We've got some current that's coming right across this big giant weed bed. So we're gonna fish the trough and across this weed bed. And on the outside of the weed bed, we're just gonna kind of make our way down and try to get some of these fish to come up and commit to this bait. Whoa. All right, well, that's the first fish over here. Well, second bite, first one to the boat. It's not big at all. But I got it on that little 110. I threw it up really close to that riprap up there. And you got it right when it hit the water. Not big, but we know they're here, and that's what matters. So this area is pretty much, it's a kind of a big flat that drops off into the main channel. So what I'm doing, I have 2 sizes of the Whopper Plopper here. I'm taking the 130 and I'm throwing it out here a little deeper where the deeper weed flat is. It's about 5 feet out here to try to call some of these fish up from the deep. But when I'm throwing up shallow, I'm gonna throw the 110. It's got a softer presentation. The plop or the action isn't as loud to try to not spook some of those fish that are up shallow. So I'm going shallow with the 110, bringing it in, and then with the 130, I'm throwing it out a little bit deeper. So I'm just kind of slicing my way down here, trying to pick up bites along this stretch. Oh my gosh, that's a big one. Oh yeah. Woo! Snuck up on me. Oh, get over here, get over here. Yes, 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 yes. Oh, whoo! Oh, you just never know when these big ones are gonna sneak up on you. I mean, it's not huge. Okay, that's 2.5, solid 2.5, maybe 2 3/4, but I'm just out here fishing. What is this? 3.5 feet, a little bit of current right through here. The reason this spot is good, you got the current coming this way. It's got lots of food. There's bluegill, there's bait, balls of bait rolling through here. I saw other small bass. You saw me catch a little bass over there. They've got this big flat, deep water access, nice chunky bass right there. It came up and smashed that thing. I was kind of falling asleep. I'd gone like 300 or 400 yards, nothing. All of a sudden, whoop! That's awesome right there. So I want you guys to notice what I'm doing out here on this spot. I'm fishing this next to ambush points. And out here, there's a bunch of them. There's these little clumps of grass, cheese, there's tules. It's a lot like the other spot that we hit earlier this morning. And these fish are gonna set up in all these ambush points. So I'm just trying to pick out ambush points and putting it in high percentage areas. And there's a divine trough that runs through this area too on both sides. So I'm fishing right down the trough, I'm going side to side, and I'm bringing it next to ambush points, trying to see if I can get some of those fish to come up and smash this thing. Oh yeah, oh, woo! Oh, stay up, stay up, stay up. Another thing you gotta do out here is make sure you got a rod with enough backbone to where you can keep these fish from diving in to the weeds. Otherwise, they can get down in there and beat you. Come off, they'll get their bait snagged up. Make sure, we'll talk about that in rigging, that your bait, that's a nice one right there, solid, that your bait, your rod, it's got enough backbone that when you catch one of these fish, you can keep them up above the weeds so they don't go crashing, down in there. Oh, it's hooked in the gills and beat you on there. So we'll talk about those, the rods a little bit later. Okay, so I went down that entire stretch. We got some good bites. I'm gonna drop a waypoint right here to show you where the stretch ends. It's basically right by the bridge. You can hear it and see the cars probably in the video. And then we're gonna go to our final spot for the morning. That'll be our morning session. And we'll go over, like I said, rigging at the end. All right, let's go to spot number 3. Okay, so we're at a third spot, another spot on the McCollum River, really close to B&W. I do want to mention one thing too about these spots. There's a lot of boat traffic. I'm fishing this during the middle of the week. You get a lot of boat traffic out here. So we're fishing, this is the last spot at 10:30. I'm trying to get a morning session in. These spots will probably get pretty thrashed on the weekend. So try to get out here pretty early, fish them on here on the McCollum, and before, I would say 10:30 or 11, or you're just gonna get pummeled by all the wakeboarders and the skiers and the pleasure boaters. So just take that into consideration, because I'm fishing this on a Tuesday and there's hardly anybody out here. So same thing, another rocky rip-rap spot. We've got tules, we got these sparse flotillas of weed mats here, and we're just gonna fish all through here. Another thing to note, we're 10:30, the sun's up. Some of these spots are pretty flat. We're still catching fish. So don't be afraid to throw topwater all day long. I'm gonna do another show after this. It's gonna be an afternoon session, and I'm gonna hit some other areas throughout the Delta and show you guys you can catch these fish on a whopper plopper all day. So don't be afraid and think it's just a morning and an evening deal. Let's see if we can get some more bites over here. There we go. All right, not huge, but still getting bit. Okay, first little 1 pounder here. One little key is I actually fished the outside edge of this weed line, and since the tide is still up, I came around and now I'm gonna fish the inside. So it's pretty sparse right here. We've got a trough up here, so a couple casts in there and I caught that fish. Another one. Attack of the little fish. Look at this little guy. Now you might not think, oh, you're just catching little ones. Well, bring your kid out here. Put a little whopper plopper on it, get him over here, let him catch these all day. Little kid's gonna have a really good time. Okay, so I covered from where I caught those initial fish in that corner and went on the inner trough. I've come down here about, I don't know, it's hard to judge the distance, but probably 1/8 of a mile. There's this big flat with this trough here, and didn't get another bite, but I know they're here. Just, it's on the delta, it's all timing. So I'll drop a waypoint here where I stopped, and then you can try on your own in this section here. And of course, that was just a whopper plopper. There's other ways to catch the fish that live in these areas. So I'll throw up some drone shot on this area for you also. And then now we're gonna go into the rigging portion so you can see the baits, again, the rods, the line, the reel, go over the particulars and why I use that stuff. So, all right, here we go. All right, so let's talk about rigging and how I caught all those topwater fish today, the baits, the rods, the reels, all the particulars, what you'll need to succeed out there. So, Whopper Plopper 110 was this guy. Now this is brand new, and you'll see I'm gonna do a review on this brand new bait on my channel here pretty soon. I'm gonna have all the baits out. You'll see what the differences are. Now this is the 110, and it's just a plain white, and there are some differences on this one compared to the other ones that you will see in a later video. So I have this on 65-pound Power Pro braid, and I use a 65-pound braid out here because you're gonna get hung up in those toolies, and these fish are gonna put you down in the weeds, and you need that heavy, heavy braid to pull this bait out and not lose it. These baits aren't cheap, and so you don't wanna be losing these baits in the toolies or in the weeds, etc. So it's a regular Palomar knot to this bait. It's the 110, and I have this on the Dobbins. Now this is the 706 CB. Now the 706 is a crankbait rod. It's 7 foot, 8 to 20 pound, and it's the heavy to moderate fast action tip. Let me back up here. Now there's a reason I want to tell you why. I better back up more. I throw it on this. Now it's got some parabolic in the tip for these treble hooks. But then as you go about 1/3 of the way down, you're gonna see that rod is straight and it gets to the backbone. So what that allows me to do on this one is to make accurate casts because it's got a soft tip. And then when those fish get on there and first hit it, the tip, it's got enough bend in there that it doesn't pull the treble hooks out of its mouth. And then as it loads up and it hits the backbone, then it drives that hook into their jaw. The other thing on this one, this sets up perfectly. This 706 crankbait rod sets up perfectly for this 110. It's a little bit lighter than the 130. And so this is actually the first time that I've thrown it on this rod, and I thought before I put it all together that this was gonna be the perfect one because the 706 is one of the heavier crankbait rods that Dobbins makes. And it was perfect for this size. It casted great, it retrieved great. When the fish loaded up, it set the hook great. Everything about it was awesome. I was able to put it in accurate areas. Now let me tell you the difference on why I did the 110 versus the 130 out there also was this lighter bait. I was able to really pinpoint it and put it in specific spots when the toolies got tight, and I could really drop it in and make those retrieves and make accurate casts. So it's on a 6-4-1 the Revo STX Abu Garcia. And I wouldn't go any faster than 6.4 to 1. I want to be able to control the speed of the retrieve on these. If you go real fast and you slow down, even when you're going slow, like say it's a Revo Rocket, it's still too fast. Sometimes I want to mix up the retrieve. So if I wanted to go real slow, I'll just slow down. And sometimes I want to buzz that thing real fast to get a reaction strike. So I use a 6.4 to 1 on this. And then let's go next to the 130. Bigger bait, obviously. And some differences, like I said, you're going to see in the next video when I do the review. 65-pound braid for the same reasons. Now on this rod, it's a little bit different. I'm actually testing this one. I've got the newer version. It's the DC 735 CB glass. So this is really what they designed this rod for, was chatterbaits or bladed jigs. And it comes in two different powers, the 735 or a 736. Now I got the 735 because originally I was going to use this for chatterbaits, but what I found on this setup was that it was just a little bit too soft for what I was trying to do. I've been experimenting with a bunch of different rods on this 130. I've thrown it on the 805 Randy Maccabee, which I like, but it's just a little too long. I've thrown it on the 735C, a little too stiff. It just doesn't have enough parabolic for me. And I think this rod is really close. I'll show you here the bend in the tip. It's just, this bait is just a little too heavy. And when I was casting it, it was a little slow to catch up. And so I was missing some of my casts. And I think if I go to the 736, that'll be just heavy enough that I think I'll be able to have the perfect setup on it with parabolic and castability. So you'll see here, again, great parabolic in the tip. You're gonna go 1/3 down through the rod, and then it's gonna get to that backbone. And I caught fish on this today too, and I had no problem getting them to the boat, no problems on the hook set. I didn't lose any fish on it. It did exactly what it's supposed to do. It was just a little bit on the castability. So I'm gonna get the 736 and I'm gonna try this bait on that, and I'm thinking that that's gonna be the right one, and I'll keep this 735 as my one and only chatterbait rod. Again, this is on a 6.4 to 1 Revo STX. They're really close to the same setups except for the actual rods. This 706 CB is full graphite. This 735 CB is a composite. So those were the setups today, and that's why I used those specific rods on that specific bait. I've tried a bunch of different setups, and these are getting, well, the 706 was perfect. 735, I'm getting close. So another real quick thing about those spots that I fished today, all I showed you was topwater. Now, if I was gonna go back out there again in the afternoon or go through one more time, I might throw these one more time because I was having a lot of fun, but I'd probably go through there with a Senko, maybe kind of slow down a little bit, clean up a little, like some of those spots, and see if I can't get a few more bites slowing down. Now, I may not have gotten any bites, and maybe they were only eating the topwater bait, but I highly doubt it. So if you come out here and decide to try some of these areas and do what I did, try the topwater in the morning, and then maybe get a Senko, or if you have a partner, have him flipping it into those areas and see if you can get some extra bites. I don't know. That's probably what I would have done. So as you can see, I'm still out here. You're hitting some background noise. I'm here at B&W with all the cars going by. I'm gonna film another episode for you guys tomorrow. I've got another area that I figured out or went and looked at. I drove all around the Delta today. There was clean water, dirty water. The bite is not easy out here. But the next episode, I'm gonna focus on one area. We're gonna do a bunch of different techniques. So stay tuned for that. Stay focused, fish hard, and I'll see you out on the water.